Now in this section I want to talk about something that we call customer ad equivalence. And customer ad equivalence really is intended to give you an idea of just how many customers you have to add in a volume-oriented business to achieve the same levels of margin, gross margin, and revenue that you do today in your current on-prem sort of business model, non-volume, if you will, business configuration. I want to start with a gross margin comparison here, basically just taking as a baseline example a 10-user deal size and looking at the levels of gross margin and the levels of revenue that you get from that same, or that you can expect to get or are likely to get from that same deal size in a traditional model versus a cloud model. And just taking the example on the left of a traditional model for 10 users, you know, the licenses that they buy probably around 22,500, assuming the average services to software ratio of a VAR today of 2. That means that they're going to spend, in this example, $45,000. This customer will spend about $45,000 in services. And if you get a gross margin on a software basis of say 45% as a partner and a services margin of 40, really pretty conservative assumptions, and in fact a little bit higher than the average. You've got total from that 10-user deal size to you as a partner, you've got total revenue of $67,500, and based on the margins available, the margin assumptions there of 45 and 40 for software and services respectively, you've got a total gross margin from a traditional 10-user deal sale of around $28,000. And let's assume that you're adding, for the sake of argument here, 7 customers per year. So you're adding 7 10-user deals per year. Let's just take that as an assumption. Now, let's look at what that margin picture and revenue picture looks like if you take that same 10-user deal as a cloud or a volume-based transaction. And let's say you charge a subscription price of $249 per user per month, which really, the note on the bottom in red, really presumes that you have some strong IP that you can bring to the equation that really justifies that kind of price point. Now, how you go about building a product that has, or an offering that has that kind of strong enough IP to command that price is really discussed in detail in the section on the productization of IP, and I encourage you to go and spend some time looking at that particular section of this webinar series. But let's get back to deal size of 10, same in a cloud or volume based scenario, subscription price of $249. You've got some licenses costs there. You've got some hosting costs. Let's say that you're charging a minimal, just in this example, a minimal what we're calling a migration fee, and really this is just to get the customer set up in that cloud configuration or that volume configuration, and effectively is for data transfer and things like that. Let's further say that it takes you 75 hours to set up that customer, and that you have a labor cost of around $85 per hour. Now, these precise numbers will vary depending upon what part of the world you're in and what your individual market characteristics are. But the point really here is that whereas in the traditional business model, a 10-user deal would give you revenue of say $67,500, the total new deal revenue that you can expect from a cloud or volume-oriented or subscription-oriented customer is significantly less, and in this case, really about half as much. Now, the margin is not quite as much lower in the case of the cloud or volume deal, but basically under these assumptions, the way that it works sort of mathematically is that if you're a traditional VAR, traditional Dynamics partner today, selling 7 new customer ads per year, as you move to a volume-oriented business, a subscription-based business, a cloud-based business, you will need to add more customers. customers. And if you assume that you get a subscription price of $249, in this example, you'll need to add 9 customers instead of 7 in order to get the same level of gross margin as you would from adding those 7 customers in a traditional business model. And on a revenue basis, you'll need to add as many as 12 new customers to get the same level of revenue as you would from adding 7 customers in the traditional business model. So you're needing to get, on a revenue equivalency basis, nearly double the number of customer adds in order to get the same level of revenue in a volume-based model as you did and enjoyed in a traditional business model. Now let's take that example and look at what that sort of equivalency picture looks like if we contemplate different levels of monthly subscription. We said that on a revenue basis a slide ago that if you add 7 customer adds, if you in the traditional business model today, to get the same level of revenue, you'll need to add about 12 in a volume-based, subscription-based, or cloud-based model. That's if your subscription price is $249, and again, that presumes that you have a relatively strong IP in that mix to justify that subscription price of $249 in most markets anyway. Certainly in the markets that we're most familiar with and that have really introduced these offerings, these cloud-based offerings, these volume-based offerings to the greatest extent. If you're, however, not able to get $249 per user per month as a subscription price and only able to get $149 as an example, to get the same revenue as you did from those 7 new customer adds in a traditional model, you have to now get 18. So that's more than double. And if you only get a subscription price of $119, in order to get the same revenue as you earned in a traditional business model from those 7 new customer adds, you would need to, at a subscription price of $119, get nearly 3 times the level of customer adds. That is 21 as opposed to 7. So the real point here is that in order to get the same level of revenue in a volume-based business model or a cloud-based or a subscription-based business model, even the best case scenario will probably require you to get up to 40% or more new customer adds than you do today. There's just no way around the fact that you will need to, in order to be successful as a volume-based business, add a dramatically higher number of customers in any given year. Now, not necessarily right away. That will take a period of time to transition to, but the end state clearly is required to be successful in the volume game that you are adding a significantly greater number of customers in any given year. Now, that preceding example was with respect to revenue equivalency. Let's look at it from the perspective of gross margin. Again, if you're getting $249 as a subscription price today, you will need to get that same level of margin, 9 customer adds. If, however, you're only able to get $149 per user per month as a subscription price, all of a sudden that that 7 customer adds then requires 20. And if the subscription amount that you're able to get is $119, you need to add 32 customers in order to get the same level of gross margin as you did from 7 customer adds in the traditional space. So really, depending upon the subscription amount, customer adds may have to increase by over 4 times to deliver the same level of margin to your business. Now, bear in mind that this is really not this is a market force that is really not controlled by any of us, but we nonetheless do all have to respond to it. Customers are demanding increasingly these kinds of offerings, subscription-based offerings, and we need to understand that in order to be effective and efficient and really adequately transition the business to become an efficient volume player, we need to be able to, depending upon the IP that we're able to monetize and the market that we're in, we need to be able to add a significantly greater number of customer adds than we do today in our traditional business model. In this section, I want to discuss what we call the services erosion dilemma and really just give you some information as to what is happening with the services side of the business, what trends we see in the partner community that we work with, really, and this is the case really no matter where in the globe you might happen to be. Its effects are more dramatic in some regions than others, but nonetheless, something very fundamental is happening to the level of services revenue that we're achieving as partners, and the level of service margins that we're achieving as partners. Now, I want to start first of all with a definition of something we call the license correlation principle. And here's what we mean by that. What we mean is that the maximum perceived value of services declines faster than the actual cost of the software, so that as software starts to cost a customer less in total, they perceive less and less value in any services that are in addition to that software that are needed to make the software achieve a useful purpose in terms of it having been configured, installed, and maintained, that kind of thing. Now, let me explain in a little bit more detail based on our database how that actually works and what that actually looks like. And really what we've got here are examples of different deal sizes, starting with 100 user deal size, right, going down to 50, 25, and then 10 users. Just to give you a sense of what we see based on the database that we have for partners really again worldwide. And this is average data, so this will be different depending upon your practice focus and your geographic location, but the same basic relationship will hold really no matter where you are. And what happens here is that you'll see very clearly that the services to software ratio declines disproportionately faster, or just declines faster than the deal size. So if you've got a 100 user deal, the chances are that for every dollar in license that you get, you're going to be getting something between $3 and $5 in services. The average in our database is $4.3 in services for every dollar in software that you get if you're talking about a 100 user deal size. If you contemplate a deal size half that, so a 50 user deal size, the likelihood is that you're not going to get $3 to $5 in services for every dollar of software that you sell. You're going to get less than that. You're going to get probably something closer to between 2 and 3 at the 50 user deal size band. And if you go even further down the scale and contemplate a 25 user deal band, again, your services to software ratio drops as the deal size drops. So at a 25 user deal size, you're likely to get somewhere between $1 and $2 in services for every dollar in software at most. And what we're finding in a lot of markets that we're active in and helping partners transition to a volume model in is that when you get down to a 10 user deal size, often you're going to get less in services than you will in software. There's a number of reasons for that, but it's pretty much always been the case that the services to software ratio declines as the deal size declines, and it's not a straight line kind of thing. And that's really what we mean by the license correlation principle. Now you can look at it another way in what we call the license correlation curve, and that again is just taking the data that you've seen on the previous slide and showing how as the deal size decreases, the dollars in services that you get relative to or proportionate to the dollars in software decline even faster, to the point where on the smaller user deal sizes we're finding even more pressure on the services side of the equation than we are at deal sizes that are higher. And of course, this is critically important because from slides that you will have seen earlier in this segment, as we move more towards a volume-based business, we can expect that services to software ratio to decline even further, and particularly in the small user deal size, so the 10 users and under, we can expect that services to software ratio to decline even faster over time. Now, services to software ratios decline, of course, as we've just described, as the deal size declines. But we've also seen not only the level of services per dollar of license sold, per dollar of software sold decline. We've also seen something of a margin squeeze among the partner community, and this is again from our database, and looks at really two things: what the charge-out rates have been, and what the labor costs have been. The difference, of course, between the two being margin, and how that's tracked over time. So, as an example, in 2005, in our database, the average charge-out rate was $162, $163 per hour. Labor cost was just over 80. That's loaded labor cost. So that gave a gross services margin of 48%. What we found happening in the last period of time, specifically over that last 6-year period, is two things that result in a margin squeeze. First of all, the charge-out rate that you can get in the market as a partner has dropped, and in this case, and on average in our database, it's dropped from something around $162 per hour to $145, $150 in that range. But at the same time as the charge-out rate per hour has become under pressure from the market point of view, customers just don't want to pay the same rates as they did once. They're more price sensitive over time, seeking to economize their own IT spending for a whole host of very understandable reasons. The sort of global economic situation, not the least of them. As customers are willing to pay less and less in the way of service rates for IT services and installation support and all that, the cost of labor that a partner faces from their own internal resource pool has been rising, and this gives rise really to a margin squeeze. So the two curves are really going in the opposite direction. That's not a good thing. And in addition to the total number of services that you can get per deal, if you will, shrinking over time and becoming very small as you get to smaller deal sizes, you also have a margin erosion happening. And in this case, in our database overall, the average services margin has gone from 48%, which was obviously a relatively healthy level, to on average 37%. That has some pretty serious impacts, obviously, in the EBITDA and profitability of a partner business. And we would expect, if anything, that this margin squeeze, continue. At what rate, who knows? But certainly we don't believe, from any of the information we have and from any of the work that we're doing with partners really around the globe, nobody's finding that their services margins are improving as time goes on. They're all finding that they're being squeezed over time. So, just in summary, we've got we've got services, on a total basis, declining on a per deal basis. The services to software ratio declining, particularly as we get into lower deal sizes. Service margins coming under pressure. And in summary, really, the fact of the matter is that the customer appetite for traditional services, IT services, is greatly diminished from what it once was, and it's still falling. What they really want, instead of paying services dollars to configure and customize software, is something that works out of the box, something that's not custom designed for them, but nonetheless designed for their industry, but not at their expense. It's already pre-configured or pre-designed to meet their needs, if you will. And really, their attitude is, prove you know my business by showing me something that I can use pretty much out of the box, and that works for me, and that addresses the business needs and issues that I have, and don't try to design a custom-built solution for me or system for me, because that will be costly. And in this economic climate especially, more costly than I can readily justify and find the money to spend on it. Now, this trend is really evident in the on-prem world. This shrinkage of services margins, this reluctance to spend the same dollars on services as the customers once did. It's evident in the on-prem world, but it's especially obvious when you get to the cloud or volume-based space, where the license correlation principle is painfully evident because precisely we are dealing with in volume type businesses really smaller average deal sizes from what is the case in the more traditional on-prem business model. And the other thing is that to the degree that the cloud offering doesn't do what it is needed to do, doesn't address the business issues and needs of the customer in terms of functionality. To the degree that your offering doesn't do that more or less out of the box as a volume player, service margins will probably be even more eroded as you're forced to really, from market pressures, deliver or build functionality that you can't charge necessarily for directly because you have the customer expecting that functionality is simply there and out of the box. Now, you may have in some businesses and some customers, certainly larger businesses most particularly, functionality that is truly strategic to their business and that they can justify, spending services dollars on to custom design for them. But that functionality has to be truly strategic. And the sense of the customer is that less and less of what they consider ERP and CRM systems in particular to do, less and less of that is considered by them to be truly strategic. And really, this is probably one of the root causes for the services margins, the low services margins that are evident for pure cloud or volume players. And it really only is acceptable because the product margins are so high. So as a Dynamics partner of VAR and ISV transitioning to a volume-based business, you really do need to make sure that your offering is on target and out of the box meets what the customer's expectations are. It gives them immediate or relatively immediate value and makes a difference to their business, does what it needs to do more or less out of the box. Now, all of that said, there are some things where services dollars, in our experience at least, can still be justified. And these are things like integrations with non-cloud systems, or again, the development of functionality that is truly strategic to an individual customer business. That can still be justified. But pretty much everything else is coming under pressure, both from the total number of services that a customer is willing to consume or buy, as well as the level of as well as the margins available on those services, and what's needed really in order to replace that service margin erosion, the drop in services dollars overall, as well as the drop in margins, is that ad hoc services, or traditional service fees that we've charged for a long time in our business, really will need to be replaced by packaged or managed services which are available fundamentally to the customer at a lower price point in most cases, but because they're packaged or managed, afford the partner, the Dynamics partner, the opportunity to earn a higher margin. Now, there's a lot of detail in terms of how you develop and bring to market and design these packaged or managed services, and I encourage you all to see the section on packaged and managed services for more detail on that topic.